Hello, good evening, everybody, and a very, very warm welcome to our webinar tonight on our Rewilding Research Cluster at the University of Hull. So my name is Dr. Laurie Lawson-Handley, and I'm the lead of the research cluster. So I'm going to be introducing tonight to you the entire research cluster and its objectives, and then I'm going to hand over to the individual supervisors who will talk to you about their projects. So thank you so much for coming tonight and being part of this. This cluster has come out of a collaboration across a number of departments at the University of Hull over the last year, and it's such an exciting topic. We're all really, really thrilled to be involved with it. So we hope that we'll have lots of really nice applications to make this a really fantastic project. So just a little bit of housekeeping before we start. So you may have already seen that the webinar is being recorded tonight, and you'll be able to access the link to YouTube at a later date if you want to look at the webinar again. And we also are very, very open to questions. So if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to put them into the question box, type them in, and then we'll have a Q&A session at the end and try and answer as many questions as we can. And if we don't get through all of them, then we'll be able to email you and answer your questions later. So without any further ado, so our research cluster is called REWILD, and if you're here tonight, I'm sure you will have heard already about rewilding. So it's a really, really hot topic at the moment. This is a really important global conservation initiative that's gained traction in the last decade or so. And it's seen as a potential solution to not only the biodiversity crisis, but also the climate emergencies as well. So we have, we're in the middle of a really quite alarming decline in biodiversity, not just in the UK, but globally. So in the UK, we've got 15% of current species threatened with extinction, and we've seen population declines, drastic population declines since the 1970s. So rewilding is thought to be one of the potential solutions to halting the scale of biodiversity loss. But it can also really help to improve carbon sequestration and flood mitigation as well. So it's a really exciting potential tool, but for it to be effective for everybody and every landscape, there needs to be a balance. So you could just go to the next animation for me there. That would be great. The thing is with rewilding that it's not just all benefits, there are some potential costs to it as well. So the benefits include healthier soils, carbon sequestration, and biodiversity restoration, but these need to be weighed against the potential costs of removing land from production and also the negative perception of some reintroductions. So we've put together a really interdisciplinary team to try and fully understand these different costs and benefits. Next slide. So our team are from 5 departments and institutes across the University of Hull. We've got the Department of Biological and Marine Sciences, the Energy and Environment Institute, the Department of Psychology, the Centre for System Studies, and the Hull International Fisheries Institute. And this is a new team of colleagues, a multidisciplinary team, and we are going to try and tackle 4 key themes of rewilding. So the first is using environmental DNA as one particular tool to look at the impact of rewilding on biodiversity. The second is to examine the environmental impacts of estuarine rewilding on flood risk and carbon sequestration. And then we'll also focus on the costs and benefits and public perceptions of rewilding programs. And finally, we'll try to understand what makes a successful reintroduction program by studying the adaptability of reintroduced species. Next slide. So it's really important for us that we team up with lots of different end users from different sectors. So, you know, there's lots and lots of different organisations that are involved in rewilding programmes. So we've teamed up already with a number of external partners, including charities like the Yorkshire Wildlife Trust and government agencies such as Natural England and companies like Yorkshire Water, so that we can try and address questions that are really, really relevant to them. And we see this as being really beneficial to you guys as students, because it's a very good opportunity for networking and you know, making connections that are really good for your future careers. So next slide. So our students are obviously at the very heart of this this cluster, and we think that there are lots of benefits to you as potential students. So, you know, you've seen that this is quite a multidisciplinary research team, and I'm sure you'll see tonight that we're all very passionate about this subject. So, you know, you'll be part of a really dynamic research environment. As well as your immediate supervisory team, you'll gain mentoring and support for your skills and your development from the wider community within the cluster, as well as the other 5 PhD students that are going to be employed on the cluster as well. And then we have great opportunities for external networking and engaging with stakeholders, as well as a number of academic collaborators that you'll partner up with as well. So great opportunities, we think, for our students here. Next slide. So now we're going to introduce you to our individual projects, and I get to go first with mine. So I'm a senior lecturer in the Department of Biological and Marine Sciences. I'm a molecular ecologist by background, and the project that I'm supervising is called Uncovering the Biodiversity Impact of Rewilding on entire ecological communities at the landscape scale using eDNA or environmental DNA. Next slide. So this project has come out of lots of conversations with various stakeholder groups like the Natural Capital Laboratory over the last few years. These organisations are doing rewilding projects, but actually struggling really to find really effective ways of measuring the success of their restoration programs. And this is a really key challenge in rewilding. So lots of projects going ahead, but actually so far we have very little evidence, and we really don't understand whether the projects are being very successful, doing what they're setting out to do. So this is a topic that's been debated quite a lot in the literature. And there's one really important idea that rewilding success can be measured by an increase in trophic complexity, as well as disturbance and random dispersal. And these 3 aspects provide an overall benefit to biodiversity. So in this project, you'll investigate the impact of rewilding projects, not just on the taxonomic richness, but also on the structure and resilience of ecological networks like food webs. So you'll be working very closely with our partners, including at the Natural Capital Laboratory, which is on the shores of Loch Ness up in Scotland, to try and understand the impact of their rewilding programs. And you'll do that using environmental DNA. And that's kind of our bread and butter in our research group at the University of Hull. So eDNA is a real game changer in biodiversity monitoring, and our group have pioneered the use of eDNA for describing whole communities from water samples. And you'll be using this to study communities, as well as predator-prey and plant-pollinator interactions. In order to make this project a success, so that the project involves you to go and carry out field work in quite remote places. So you need to be, quite prepared to do that, and also equally at home in the lab doing eDNA analysis. There's also quite a heavy data component as well, so you generate huge amounts of data with eDNA. So you need to be quite competent in bioinformatics as well as statistics. I would say that with this, it's a great opportunity to work with stakeholders. So you need to be really quite happy with working with other research teams and with stakeholders. So next slide. So the project's also supervised by James Gilbert, who's an insect ecologist in our department at the University of Hull, and Blake Morton, who is in the Department of Psychology. And the main collaborators, as I've said before, are the Natural Capital Laboratory, but also the University of Cumbria and Nature Metrics. And there's an opportunity within this project to actually do a placement at Nature Metrics, which I think is a really exciting prospect. And that's it for my project. I'm just going to also stay on the line for a couple more minutes and tell you about Blake's project. So Dr. Blake Morton unfortunately can't be here tonight, and I'll try and do justice to his wonderful project. So Blake is in the Department of Psychology, and his project is called Understanding Environmental Adaptability in Wild Mammalian Carnivores, a Multidisciplinary Perspective. So next slide. So Blake studies animal personalities and cognition, and he's interested in how these psychological traits influence an individual's or a species' adaptability. So this is, as you can imagine, really important in a reintroduction setting. If reintroduction of shy individuals or species might be doomed to failure, whereas bolder individuals may be more adaptable and actually possibly also invasive. So adaptability is due to a number of traits, including genetic diversity, life history, but also psychological traits. So in this project, you'll be trying to understand why some species are so adaptable while others aren't, and to what extent a species' adaptability is driven by psychological traits. And quite a different aspect of this project is also trying to understand how public perception of those species traits is important in a rewilding context. So the project involves administering puzzles to wild carnivores to try and obtain data on their personality and their problem-solving abilities. And then you'll be exploring the relationships between these traits and public perception using online questionnaires. And Blake would be very, very happy for you to have some experience and knowledge in field work of these, for example, using trail cameras. But this isn't, it is desirable rather than essential. You need to be able to work quite efficiently to get the job done and be quite happy to do to drive to remote places and work in quite remote field conditions. And you also need to have really good statistical skills for this project. So next slide, please. So here is Blake, looking very happy. Blake is the primary supervisor of this project. And then you have me and Charlotte also on the call tonight, who will be chipping in and helping to support the project where we can. And that's it from me. I'm going to pass on to the next speaker.
Hi everyone, my name's Rob Thomas and I'm a Senior Research Fellow in the Energy and Environment Institute at the University of Hull. Tonight I'm going to be talking to you about our PhD project, which is optimizing blue carbon storage in estuaries using rewilding and eco-engineering approaches. Next slide, please. So estuary management and managed realignment on the Humber acts as both a flood defense and initially at least it creates mud flat habitat to compensate for losses due to development elsewhere. So development of the port structures and development of the chemical plants and so forth in the estuary. Previous studies have indicated that sedimentation rates in the middle and inner Humber limit the timescale over which realignment is an effective flood defense, and they accelerate the transition from mudflat to high salt marsh. But there's a new managed realignment site planned by the Environment Agency for the outer estuary, where the sedimentation regime is really very, very different. And the establishment of this new site provides us with a novel opportunity to study sedimentation rates and carbon capture as salt marsh begins to establish on those mud flats and then proliferates. And so this project therefore aims to study the sedimentation rates and carbon capture by salt marshes, both in the past by looking at existing locations within the Humber estuary, and in the present by studying this new managed realignment location. So our proposed approach will first exploit LiDAR and aerial imagery together with ground-based surveying techniques to quantify spatiotemporal sedimentation patterns. Then we'll look to try to extract some cores to explore long-term carbon storage. And then finally, we'll look to use Northumbria's groundbreaking LGR ultra-portable greenhouse gas analyzer to simultaneously measure methane, carbon dioxide, and water vapor in situ. If we have time and resources, we will also look to establish an eddy covariance station at the new managed realignment location, but that's kind of dependent upon resources. And the data we gather will be used to explore whether the rate of carbon capture is dependent upon salt marsh species assemblage and maturity, and or whether there are other like hydraulic and chemical drivers such as wave current action and salinity that influence the rate of carbon capture and sedimentation rates as well. So to bring out the best in this project, ideally you would have some geochemical background. You would also be keen to do field work, not too scared to get muddy and wet, because unfortunately working in an estuary is one of the challenges. And ideally you'd be adaptable and able to approach different challenges as we go on, because part of the project will be problem solving as we go. Next slide, please. So the supervisory team consists of myself, and I've got expertise in geomorphology, remote sensing and turbulence measuring and monitoring, and 3 other environmental scientists, each of whom bring a range of different skill sets. So we have Rodney Forster, who is an expert on intertidal ecology, satellite remote sensing and underwater optics. We have our external supervisor, Professor Mike Rogerson up at Northumbria, who's an expert in carbonate geochemistry. And finally, we have Dan Parsons, who is the director of the Energy and Environment Institute and is an expert in sedimentology, plastic pollution, innovative measurement techniques. The project partners are the Environment Agency, and we hope that the outputs from this project will input into the Centre for Ecology and Hydrology's Salt Marsh Carbon Code, which is currently in development, and we hope to be feeding into the later phases of that development process. So that's it for me. I'll pass you on to the next supervisor.
Thank you and good evening. I'm Dr. Africa Gomez, Senior Lecturer in Biology at the University of Hull and the lead supervisor for this PhD project, Greening Blue Spaces at Hull. Can I have the second slide, please? So the main impetus behind this PhD project is the wide realization that urban green and blue spaces have positive impacts both for society, but also for biodiversity. For example, access to blue spaces such as rivers, lakes, and coastal waters, and green spaces provide a range of social and health benefits, as many of us have experienced in the last couple of years. But how do these 2 aspects interact? How do biodiversity and social benefits play together? Could greening or rewilding areas surrounded blue spaces provide further benefits, synergies for communities and for biodiversity? So for those of you who don't know Hull, Hull has a wide range of blue spaces, large public park lakes, reservoirs, a network of drains and ditches, the River Hull that dissects the city from north to south, and the Humber Estuary, which is internationally recognized for migrating and wintering birds. Although part of these blue spaces are inside public parks or next to sites of nature conservation importance within other green spaces. Others are surrounded by built environment or bounded by hard defenses with little or no adjacent green space and often no access to residents. So the aims of this multidisciplinary project and very exciting PhD opportunity would be the first part to assess the habitat quality around blue spaces in Hull. This would involve use of remote sensing, GIS analysis, and also statistical analysis of existing records on national and regional biodiversity databases, such as NBN or iRecord, and also planned habitat surveys and species surveys. The second part would be to evaluate the community benefits and perceptions of blue spaces surrounded by different quality habitats that you would have assessed before. So you would need to design and implement questionnaires and surveys to local communities. And finally, to identify areas where blue spaces could be greened or rewilded to enhance both future urban biodiversity and community benefits within the limits of it being within a city, for example, flood management. So you would have to engage with practitioners from a range of organizations to plan and suggest the implementation of these measures, which could enhance and establish accessible green spaces around urban blue spaces in Hull for maximum benefit. Can I have the final slide? So I will be joined by a supervisory team, which in addition to me includes also marine biologist Dr. Rodney Foster and Dr. Charlotte Hopkins. And the PhD will develop in collaboration and partnership with a network of stakeholders and partners, including Hull City Council, Yorkshire Wildlife Trust, Humber Nature Partnership, Yorkshire Water, and others. So that's all from me. Thank you for listening, and I'm looking forward to your questions.
Hello, my name is Dr. Charlotte Hopkins. I'm a lecturer in marine biology at Hull, and I'm also a marine social scientist. And the project that I will be lead supervisor on is Rewilding the Sea, Perceptions, Values and Challenges. Next slide, please. So the key questions and where this project came out of are, we have quite a kind of basic understanding of how marine rewilding is currently working. So we are more progressed on land than we are in the sea. And so we really don't have a full understanding of which initiatives constitute marine rewilding, the number of these initiatives, or the effectiveness of these rewilding projects. So for instance, there's a lot of terminology around habitat restoration, marine rewilding, and we don't know yet how all these things fit together. We also kind of need to question what the drivers are for marine rewilding and how this fits into use of the marine environment. We also have the key question of how coastal communities can actively participate in decision-making processes surrounding the sea and its uses. And therefore, this project will really try to address how coastal communities interact with the marine environment, how they use it, and how they value their marine environment, really towards trying to get these active participatory approaches to develop and facilitate stakeholder dialogue within coastal communities. So this really builds on some previous work that we've done in this area, but still very kind of new in the marine environment. So this project will really involve understanding rewilding. The common space of the sea is quite complex. So the idea is that you will look at the governance and policy and implementation challenges surrounding this this new kind of concept for the ocean, but also the kind of need to engage with coastal communities, appreciating that there may be great potential for conflicting perceptions and conflicting values that people have for the marine space. So this project will really use a kind of new way of thinking, really kind of active interventions, active research, to get really participatory approaches that facilitate stakeholder dialogue. So not just kind of observing as researchers, but actively acting to facilitate dialogue within these community groups. Doing this through a number of participatory approaches, using things like interviews and focus groups as well. So this project would really suit anyone that has experience in social science methodology or has an interest in developing their skills in this area. It would really benefit from you having knowledge about the marine environment and about marine conservation. But again, this is kind of a desirable skill, kind of looking for someone that is not afraid to talk to people and isn't afraid to develop their skills in things like qualitative data analysis rather than just quantitative. And another approach that we potentially could use in this project is systems thinking. So understanding the marine environment as part of a complex social ecological system. Next slide, please. So this project will be supervised by myself, but also by Professor Gerald Midgley, who is an expert in systems thinking and systems approaches for stakeholder engagement. Thank you.
All right, hello everyone. My name is Bernd Henfling. I'm also a molecular ecologist, just as Laurie. This means I'm using DNA-based methods to answer quite a wide range of ecological questions. But during the last 6 years or so, I have mainly focused on developing and applying biodiversity monitoring methods based on environmental DNA or eDNA. So this approach is also at the core of this exciting project, which is called Effective Biodiversity Monitoring of River Rewilding Project using eDNA modeling. Can I have the next slide, please? So during the last few years, we have come really quite far with the eDNA approach, especially when it comes to studying freshwater communities. And a method which was really instrumental in that is so-called eDNA metabarcoding. So now this is a super efficient approach where we can use cutting-edge DNA sequencing technology to extract information on the entire target community from a simple water sample. Now, the spatial accuracy of this approach is really good in lakes. So we're talking about 50 to 100 meter, mainly because there is the potential for environmental DNA to be transported across this environment is quite limited. So this is quite a different situation in rivers, of course, where DNA can be transported quite a distance from its source before it degrades. So there's a discordance between the eDNA signal we pick up and the location of the organism which actually shed it. Now, and that is where hydraulic modeling comes in. So we will use these models, which were originally constructed for understanding sediment particle transport, and apply them to understand eDNA transport. Now, this will in turn allow us to predict riverine species distribution much more accurately as this was been possible so far. There has been some pilot work being done on this topic already, but there's a lot more to do to make these applicable to understand really specific ecological questions. Now, in this project, we will apply these methods to a couple of really exciting ongoing river rewilding projects. One is called Unlocking the River Severn, so where we will look at the impact of the removal of migration barriers, especially on migratory species such as the trade chat, but also at the associated impacts on the wider fish community. The other one is the restoration of the river Bise in Norfolk. So this river is going to be restored into a very natural river with natural flow and floodplains. And in this context, it is planned to reintroduce a fish which has been extinct from the UK since the 1970s, the so-called burbot. That's one of the first sort of fish reintroduction projects nationwide. So you can see that this is quite a cross-disciplinary project. and we therefore have quite a broad supervisory team to match the required expertise. Could I have the next slide, please? The project is led by John Bolland. John is a fish ecologist and fisheries biologist. The eDNA side of things are represented by myself and Laurie, and Dan Parsons and Rob Dorrell are experts in applying these particle transport models. But there's also a great opportunity to link up with a wide range of stakeholders and scientific collaborators, for example, the Rivers Trust, Natural England, and then collaborators at UCL and Bournemouth University. So this provides a good opportunity for networking. So what we are really looking for in an ideal candidate, that is somebody who can embrace this multidisciplinary, so you need to be prepared to carry out some field work, but also be able to work in the molecular lab, as well as getting stuck in with the computer modeling. So quite a diverse range of skills and challenges are involved there. So you don't need to be an eDNA expert, but we expect that you would have some molecular experience. The eDNA protocols are pretty established in our lab, so I think the main intellectual challenge will be more the data analysis side, especially the modeling aspects. So some skills in this, or a demonstrable capability in complex data analysis would be quite important. So I hope you find this project exciting, and we will be seeing some of your applications soon.
So we're now going to watch a short video to just whet your appetite for postgraduate study at the University of Hull. And while you're watching the video, if you want to multitask, you can also post some questions in the chat for us, and we'll answer them once the video is finished.
Postgraduate research is critically important to the university. All fantastic researchers have been student researchers. We're a people business. It's all about people. We put significant investment ourselves into our research student studies. We have about 40 scholarships currently at the moment that we offer. They're funded, both the fees and a stipend to help with the living costs of doing that. We have access to other funded PhD schemes throughout the DTPs, the CDTs, and we've got things called Aura, which look at the offshore wind industry. We've got the White Rose, we've got Heritage. There's a whole range of things in there.
The University of Hull is a fantastic place to do a research degree. Hull is a small city that's within easy reach of the coast and countryside. It's also one of the most affordable places in the UK to live and study.
The best thing about being a postgraduate researcher at Hull is that it's the right size, so you're not just kind of lost in the crowd. You kind of get more one-on-one attention. I really enjoy doing research and figuring out new things. For me, a PhD means synthesizing new knowledge and getting to contribute something to the field. My supervisory team has been really supportive from the very start. They had been really supportive going through the process of getting a visa and, who to email, who to contact. It made me feel like they cared about me. They're incredibly supportive, and they're two of the most knowledgeable people that I know as well. Being an international student at Hull, I think is just like being any other student. I think it's a really diverse community, and everybody's been really welcoming from the start.
I am a PhD student at the Department of Biomedical Sciences. I'm funded through the Pet Healthcare Technologies Research Cluster. I specialise in drug delivery to the lungs. We have one person specialising in artificial intelligence, someone developing new tracers to detect different cancers, and a final student looking at some microfluidic devices. At Hull, we have some really fantastic research facilities. We have a PET RC, or positron emission tomography research centre. We have a dedicated preclinical cyclotron, and we're able to generate our own radiation on demand, which is pretty cool. My career plan is to move to industry. I recently secured a job down in London following some work experience my supervisor set up for me before I started my PhD, and I'll be working there as a lead radiochemist.
The Doctoral College supports postgraduate researchers in a number of ways. Most importantly, they're a central point of contact at any stage in a postgraduate researcher's journey. We have one of the best skills teams in the country, and they offer a dedicated programme of postgraduate training courses.
There are amazing benefits of doing a research degree here at Hull. And there's a brilliant research culture where you get to meet other PGRs, share your ideas and experiences, and help peer support each other through your research journey. The postgraduate training scheme is Hull's sector-leading, free accredited research training programme, which you do alongside your main research degree, whether that's a master's or a PhD. We also offer a lot of extracurricular activities as well. It's designed to help you develop your research, professional and personal skills.
I would recommend Hull to other PGR students because I think that Hull is really up and coming, and that's an exciting place to be in research.
I would recommend Hull to other postgraduate researchers. It's a great city, a great place to be a student, and also there is some fantastic research being done here.
Hello again, everyone. Yes, so I hope you enjoyed that little video. Can I ask all our supervisors to put their cameras on, please, while we open up the floor for questions? So we've had a few questions coming in, which is brilliant. And I think what we'll do is we'll start with some general questions, and then I can see one project-specific question, but we will try to answer some of the general questions first. So there's a question from Claire, and that's, can we apply for more than one project within the cluster? And the answer to that, Claire, is a very simple yes, you can. So you can apply for as many projects as you like. And actually, I would say that makes quite a lot of sense, given that there is, there's some overlap in some of the projects. So, for example, if you're interested in eDNA, you're more than welcome to apply for both mine and Bernd's project. So I hope that answers your question. It's a fairly straightforward one to begin with. I'm going to go down the list now, otherwise I'm scared of missing one out. So India asks, will there be the opportunity to travel nationally or internationally to visit other rewilding case studies to compare perceptions of people both living with and without predators? For example, in Oostvaardersplassen, excuse my Dutch pronunciation, versus Yellowstone. That's a really interesting question. Would love to go to Oostvaardersplassen and Yellowstone as well. So I think my understanding is that all projects have a very much UK focus initially, but I think if the opportunity arises within your project for you to visit overseas, then I think all your supervisors would really encourage you to do so. So although there isn't the direct links with those projects as yet, there's no reason why there can't be in the future. I'm just going to open that question up to the other supervisors to see whether anyone has got any international links that might be of interest to India and other applicants. Dan.
Yeah, just to reiterate, the thing with most of these PhDs is they're loose outlines of what you'll end up doing, and they're a framework to build from. And indeed, when PhD candidates come on to projects, what we're actually looking for them is for them to lead, and for them to step up and make the project their own, and of course take the project in directions and ways in which hadn't been thought of to begin with, and that's part of that journey. So without doubt there'll be opportunities to grow those projects, and that may involve an international dimension. One of the things we always encourage our PhD candidates to do is to is to seek their own additional funding. So these PhDs do come with you know, the stipend, the fees, and also a research support training grant that facilitates the execution of the projects as loosely planned. But there is also always the opportunity to augment that funding, and indeed your supervisors will support you in pulling together, you know, other additional funding opportunities and proposals to augment the funding that you're doing. And again, that could involve an international element. So yes, I would say all of that's possible. And then finally, all of the supervisors all work with people all over the world, right? We're an international institution. We work with people all over the place. So some of the stuff that we originally did on eDNA that formed some of the ideas that are fed into the project that Bernd presented involved some work on the Mekong River in Southeast Asia. So there's already those kind of international links on all of these projects that you'll be able to follow and see what works for you as you make the project your own.
Can I also say that as part of your PhD, you would be expected to participate in international conferences. So there should be international conferences of rewilding that we would expect you to go and present the results you obtained during your PhD. Hopefully in person, but that's something that is out of our control.
Hopefully, we would like to be able to come with you as well. Thank you very much to Africa and Dan for those really thorough answers. So we have the next question from Zanera, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. The question is this funded PhD also for international students who have done their masters from the UK? So anybody is eligible to apply. So we'd welcome applications from international students. All students receive a full bursary while they're studying, and the university has agreed to cover the equivalent of the home fees. So that means that if you're an international student, you'll have to top up the rest of the fees. So Dan, you may be better answering this than I am. I think that the home fees are about 4,500. And then the international fees are 9,000. Is that correct?
It depends a little bit on the program and where you get registered across the university. But it is important to let folks know that the doctoral college do have some international fee waivers as well. So even though getting all technical here, I know, but it's important. So if you're a UK student, that's easy. Your fees are all paid for. If you're an international student, the fees are more expensive. Now, where that funding comes from is really key to you as an individual. The doctoral college do have international fee waivers that can be applied, but that's an additional application process, so it's not guaranteed. So you need to go into an application with your eyes open in terms of that. Now, if the fees are not waived, then Laurie's right that there's a fee shortfall that you would have to make up essentially. But we will, if you know we've got a successful international candidate here, we will be working with them to apply for those doctoral college fee waivers to ensure that the fee is essentially zero for an international applicant of high quality. So we want the best people on these programs. It's a big investment from the university. We want the best people to be the alumnus of the university and contribute to the research and the culture here. So my advice would be international students, yes, please do apply, and we'll work with you and as hard as we can to ensure that we secure the best people through that fee waivers scheme.
Absolutely. So I have a question here from Sophie. She asks, would it be possible to apply for any of these or similar projects in 2023? And so that's an interesting question because the cluster, this particular cluster, has been allocated funding to begin in September 2022. So every year, under normal circumstances, the university has this competitive cluster application process. So for the following year, there'll actually be a new set of research clusters that will be funded. So these particular projects are all set to start in September 2022. I hope that answers your question, Sophie. We have a couple of similar questions about funding for international students. Forgive me if I skip over those ones because I think we've covered that quite thoroughly. I'm just looking to see if there's any more general ones. So Sophie asks, would we be able to look at data and visit some rewilding projects that have happened in the UK, like with buffalo down in the south of England and with beavers? Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on the particular project and whether that is relevant. So with the project that I'm supervising, so we have a collaboration already established with the Natural Capital Lab, and the species focus there will probably be pine martens, but there are, like as Dan was saying, these projects aren't set in stone from the outset, so it's possible that you could look specifically at the impact of rewilding projects that use buffalo and in their context. It's worth me saying that we're also doing a lot of other work in other projects on beavers. So certainly from the point of view of my project, we probably wouldn't be covering any more beaver stuff in this particular project. Dan, did you want to come in on that?
Yeah, I was just kind of thinking what one looking at other sites and other, particularly perhaps in the first 6 months of the program, what we want to try and do with these clusters is create a cohort feeling. So there's a group of you together who are all peers, kind of working and connecting together. And one of the things we've done on some of the other clusters and might work well here is actually go as a group of supervisors and a group of PhD candidates to visit a rewilding site for a day, to connect together and discuss things. And we would work with whoever's recruited onto here to perhaps think about where we could go for the day, and that might involve discussion of various sites. So yeah, whether or not it's specific to a project will be down to the advisory teams, but of course we want to enable the benefits of all working together here, and perhaps visiting a rewilding site altogether would be a really great thing to do at the start. And we do try and have these reading groups and bring people together in clusters like that, and have those sorts of events. So we could certainly look at visiting places all as a group.
That's a fantastic idea. We will definitely try that. Bernd, did you have a?
Yeah, along the same lines, really. From a practical point of view, there's always opportunities within clusters to help other PhD students for fieldwork, for example. And you often need 2 or 3 people going out, so they're usually sort of small groups within these clusters going out doing things. So you will be seeing or be involved in much more than just your project, and that's one of the real advantages of a cluster environment, that you sort of get drawn into lots of other really interesting topics, and also have opportunities to take part actually in the research and in the traveling and in the fieldwork side of these things.
Definitely. We just have one final question that's very, very general, and then we have a number of project-specific ones. So I'm just going to skip to Tanya's question, which is, can these PhDs be done part-time? Yes, they can. So they are 5 years part-time plus 6 months write-up, and yes, that is possible, and you just stipulate that as an option when you are applying. It's a good idea. Well, I think this is probably true for everybody to, if you want to know more about the project and whether part-time working really fits with the project, it's a good idea to contact the supervisor and just have that conversation in advance. But yeah, certainly it's possible to apply for part-time. Right, I am going to direct some questions at my colleagues. Let's just have a look. So Okay, so there's an eDNA one here, but I'm going to direct it at Bernd rather than take it myself because I don't want to hog the conversation. So Claire asks, do you know of any short courses I could do to help develop data analysis skills related to eDNA, as it's an area of real interest to me, but feel I'd like to be more competitive? It's a great question, Claire.
It's a good question. There are always courses on from the molecular side, but also from the data analysis side. I cannot give you from the top of my head exact details, but if you email me, I can have a look, because I've among my networks of colleagues, I can find out if you want to, and I can direct you to some good courses.
So I would also say, Claire, that so that there's you'll have heard of NERC presumably. So there's a NERC facility called the NERC Environmental Omics Facility that runs short training courses in eDNA as well as other molecular skills like bioinformatics. And you don't have to be registered as a student to actually take those courses. So if you Google NEOF, N-E-O-F, Sheffield, you'll find a full list of those training courses. And if you can't find them, please feel free to get in touch. I'm actually on the steering committee of NEOF, so I can easily put you in touch with them. I don't know if you're on Evoldia as well, but that's also a good source of various courses. And I'm going to go to Dan, who's chomping at the bit.
Just a quick one. When I first started doing a little bit of eDNA work with Bernd, and I had no idea what it was. I found a course online. I will find it again because I'll have bookmarked it. I think it was on Future Learn or somewhere like that. But I'll send it to Bernd and Laurie. So if you do reach out, whoever asked the question, then they'll have at least the knowledge of the one I watched. It was a kind of set of it was I think it was Future Learn, but it was a set of short videos that kind of gave the basics to the technique and its assumptions, etc., and then the bioinformatic part of it. So I learned quite quickly via that. So I knew what I was talking about when I went to the meetings.
Oh, I didn't know about that, Dan. That'd be really interesting to see. Right, I'm going to cut to Charlotte, if I may. We've got a question from Lydia. Is it possible to do the Rewilding the Sea PhD remotely with regular visits to Hull if you were unable to relocate?
I think this would be a conversation that I'd be happy to pick up on email with you if you're interested. But given the current circumstances, we do have a lot of people working remotely at the moment, and within this project, it would be quite flexible for that to happen. What I would say though is that being part of the cluster and being part of Hull is, really part of the experience in terms of you able to mix with the cohort and get a lot of kind of peer opportunities as well. So although we can be flexible with remote kind of PhDs, there is that element that we would really encourage you to be part of the research environment and the kind of the wider cluster and the wider kind of student experience at Hull while you're doing your PhD. It can sometimes be a bit of a lonely process doing a PhD, so that becomes really important to have those big strong links with the kind of the people that are surrounding you. There will be elements of fieldwork in the Rewilding the Sea PhD as well. So that would, if you'd like to discuss that via email in terms of kind of commitment towards different things like fieldwork, I'm happy to pick up that conversation. I don't know whether anyone else wants to add in there as well about kind of remote working for different projects.
I think that was beautifully said, Charlotte. Nothing more to add. I think, I mean, one of the massive benefits of these projects is, just being part of the cluster and having that support network around you. And I think you'd still experience some of that if you were working remotely, but not to the same level, I think. But I have another question for Charlotte, actually. So Christopher asks, what particular stakeholders are the project aiming at? In other words, fishers, industry, education, etc., or are stakeholders derived from particular socio-ecological issues associated with current or past or future rewilding initiatives?
Okay, so Again, like Dan said, like a lot of these projects may change from the kind of outline framework that we have, but this rewilding kind of project builds on work we've done with coastal communities in particular. So coastal communities are made up by a diverse stakeholder group as it is. You might find in some of the kind of remote communities in Scotland that we've been working with, there's a mixture of kind of livelihood activities that go on. So people are fishing as well as kind of active in the community as kind of community leaders. They have an interest in conservation. So the project is hoping to tap into that really diverse set of stakeholders. Kind of coastal communities is just kind of a catch-all term for very different people within those communities. So within that kind of framework, there's scope to kind of develop the project and potentially look at some of the differences in perceptions between different stakeholder groups. And that's really what the project is all about. It's about kind of trying to develop the ideas around what rewilding is, what it means to different groups of people and their perceptions and how they value the marine environment. So we really don't have a lot of knowledge about that at the moment in terms of how different stakeholder groups really perceive rewilding, and that's what this project is really aiming to get at. So I hope that answers the question.
I'm sure it does. That was a great answer, Charlotte. Thank you. I have a question for Africa from Irfan. It's a really interesting question. So Irfan has an urban design MA degree, and says I also teach GIS Pro. So are those skills related to your project? So urban design and GIS.
Okay, so obviously urban design is related to the project, but I would find it the project because it's mainly focused on habitat assessment and biodiversity assessment and the human social side of things. I think that an urban background, an urban design background might not be ideal for the project, but obviously you mentioned your GIS skills, and this is a skill that would be very useful for the project. So I'm not really sure, because when projects are so multidisciplinary, sometimes everybody's going to have to learn a lot, so from different areas. So I wouldn't say it's totally out of, your possibilities to qualify for this PhD. But yeah, it's a tricky one.
Thank you, Africa. So we have a couple of eDNA questions. Bernd, I think this one may be a general one aimed at both of us. So it's from Thomas, and it says, I have a question regarding the eDNA project. Will the focus be on metabarcoding to analyse the samples, or will there also be single species detection done by a qPCR? I'll let you go first on that one.
Yeah, no, my project will be largely metabarcoding. As we have mentioned it many times before, nothing is set in stone. If it should transpire, it would be really advantageous to use qPCR approaches. I can't see why not, but at the moment I can't see that this will be the case, so I would assume it's going to be all metabarcoding.
And you just made it very, very easy for me, because I would say exactly the same. So I was trying to think of a context in which we might use qPCR in this project. And I guess, if you're trying to monitor the reintroduction success of a particular species, then in some cases it might be more effective to do that with qPCR. And for example, and maybe, if you're looking at the impact on a particular conservation priority species, like, I don't know, white-clawed crayfish, just to pick one out the bag, then that could be potentially more effective with qPCR as well. So I would say let's wait and see. Both options are on the table. I think there was, let me see, there was another one for me, actually. I think two questions from Christopher that are quite related. So direct experience in molecular biology and in marine biology. I think having, and I think this would probably apply to Bernd's project as well. I think having some experience in a lab setting. So if you've picked up a pipette before and you've done a PCR, that's always advantageous. But as Bernd said earlier, this is kind of what we do routinely in the lab, and we provide all the training that you needed. So yeah, a little bit of molecular biology experience is desirable, but don't let it put you off if you've not done much of it previously. And Christopher, you also asked about having a marine biology background. Yeah, why not? So my project in particular is terrestrial and freshwater focused, but I don't think that that's necessarily a problem. That if you have a marine biology background, it's we're all ecologists at the end of the day. Yeah, I'd be really quite open to welcoming a marine biologist. Otherwise, Charlotte would be very unhappy with me if I said anything against marine biologists. Let's have a look at. Now then, there was a couple of questions relating to Blake's project. So just bear with me. I'll just see if I can. I hope I'll be able to answer them. Before I do, actually, I've just come to one from Sophie for Africa. Sophie asks, would it be possible to research the feasibility of reintroduction of red squirrels to some green spaces in Hull?
Oh, that's an interesting one. It is possible. It seems, Hull is really far away from any red squirrel population that I am aware, but there are probably opportunities for facilitating colonization from species that are almost establishing naturally within Hull. So I think that maybe red squirrels might be a little bit far-fetched. I wouldn't say impossible. In my local park in Spain, red squirrels were reintroduced and they are doing very well. But obviously there's grey squirrels in Hull. So it might be a bit tricky because you might have to eliminate the grey squirrels beforehand. So it might turn up into a massive thing. So this project is more about habitat rewilding than about a particular species rewilding, in the sense that if you create habitats and make space for wildlife in existing blue and green spaces, then natural colonization processes will take over, and some of the blue spaces that you will be working with are linear spaces that are very well connected with very rich habitats like the Humber and the River Hull. So if the right habitat is created, then the chances are species like otters or waders will naturally colonize these spaces and become accessible to people living in the city. So sorry that I can be more positive about your idea about the red squirrels. It would be great to have them around, but I'm a bit pessimistic with that one.
Wouldn't it be great to be able to see red squirrels from your office window? So I'm really conscious of the time, but we just have 2 questions from Alicia, which I'd really like to try and answer, because I think that would mean that we've been through all the questions. So if you need to go, please feel free. But if you had just 2 more minutes, then stay on the line. So Alicia asks about Blake's project, and I'll do my best to answer. So she says, I'm looking at the environmental adaptability in wild mammalian carnivores. I know this is possibly sensitive information, but do you have a rough idea of where the research will be conducted? Is it going to be further afield, or is it just Yorkshire-based? Yeah, actually, don't worry. I think I don't think it's sensitive, and I think I feel quite comfortable answering this. So Blake does a lot of work in Cropton Forest in North Yorkshire. So he has established study sites out there. So I would imagine that some of the work will be based in Cropton. But we also, as part of this project, have a collaboration with the Lifescape project, and the Natural Capital Lab. So that's based at Loch Ness. So yeah, I think some of the field work would be based up there, which would be very, very nice indeed. And the final question from Alicia is about the start date. So understanding the start month of September 2022, is there a chance to slightly delay that in terms of finishing previous projects education in September? So ideally, a September start date would be great, because that will be would coincide with everybody all starting together on the cluster. But the university has 3 enrollment dates per year, so it's right at the end of September. So hopefully you would have handed in your MRes by then, Alicia. The next enrolment date after that is the 31st of January. Which I don't think it would be too catastrophic if you started just 3 months later, especially if you had some contact with the project and the supervisors in the interim period. But I think we'd try and encourage you to start by January at the very latest. I think that's it. So, oh, there's one more question. It's brilliant that there's so many questions coming through. So I really don't want to leave this one out, seeing as it's just the very last question. So please bear with us. So Sophie asks, I know that maybe this is one for Africa actually, because I know you know about East Park. I know that East Park Zoo want to work on a project to reintroduce them to Hull. So this relates to the squirrels. To get some in their zoo ready for this project they want to take on. I know with red squirrels, grey squirrels are a big issue. I'm also aware a multidisciplinary approach needs to be considered. I appreciate you answering my question, though. Thank you. So that was, that was good to see that.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. Well, we are going to engage with the Hull City Council's Park and Leisure, so we could discuss that with them.
Fantastic. That would be great. Thank you so much for all those wonderful questions. It's really, really great to see all those good questions coming through. And that's it for us this evening. I hope that's been really useful, and that some of you are excited and ready to send in your applications, and we really look forward to receiving them. So please do feel free to get in contact. It's awful timing with the deadline just after Christmas, but I will be looking out for some emails coming out over the Christmas period. And if you have any questions that are more general, then I'd advise you to contact the Doctoral College as well at the email address here. Okay, and thank you very much for all our wonderful panelists, and have a wonderful Christmas, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.